All right, so here we are in part 2 of the simplicity message, because I've decided to make a simple message more complex. And so it's going to be at least 2 parts. It might even end up being 3 parts. I'm not really sure exactly. So I got to do a little bit of review for those of you who missed part 1, and then I'm going to push into some new territory as well. And so last week we got to meet one very sorry, overloaded camel. And largely what we were talking about is, it's this whole idea of the straw that breaks the camel's back. And so we start loading up the camel, and we recognize that, eventually there is going to be a straw, there's going to be some burden, there's going to be some load that this poor guy is going to be asked to carry that will actually be simply too much. And we say that's the straw that, say it with me, broke the camel's back. That's the straw that broke the camel's back. And so we were asking the question, I wonder how heavy that straw was, right? Like, how big was that straw? And of course, it doesn't matter if it is the heaviest straw. It doesn't matter if it's some massive kind of a deal or if it's just a tiny, tiny little straw. It doesn't matter how heavy the straw is that broke the camel's back. The one that breaks the camel's back is the last straw. That's kind of the point. It was the last straw. It doesn't matter how much it weighed. But then again, once you start talking about it being the last straw, it raises, of course, another real serious question for us. Why do we blame the last straw? I mean, why? Because that's what we do. Something happens, and we're pushed over the edge, and all of a sudden, now we're upset. Now we're raging. Now we're like, oh, we got to do it. I can't blame that. Because that was the last straw. It was the last straw because of the burden. It was the last straw because of all of the other straws that we have allowed to continue to accumulate, weigh us down. It's really all of the straws together that break our poor camel's back. And what are some of the straws that are breaking the backs of your camel? We used to have this idea that there was an American dream, and whether it was ever true or not isn't really the question. But we look at it now, and I think to myself sometimes, I think the American dream is this. I think that's what it is. I think the American dream is to carry as many things as we possibly can at every given moment. That's now what we long for. That's our dream. We're like, I hope I can get more stuff to do and to weigh me down. Now, of course, you would never say it like that, but that's actually how we live. This is it. And we see it in so many different ways. We are working longer hours. We are taking less time off. We are vacationing less than most any other of the developed countries. We have more debt. We create more trash per capita. We watch too much TV. We don't exercise enough. We eat too much. This is all common knowledge. We already all know all of these things. Read the newspaper, read a magazine, something. It will tell you this over and over again. We spend too much time swiping and scrolling and screening in general. We own more. We live in bigger houses. We drive fancier cars. And yet we are less happy than ever. Time seems like something we simply don't have enough of. We just don't. One of my favorite quotes from the ancient world, it's from 2,200 years ago. Context and date matter on this quote. His name is Plautus from 200 BC. The gods confound the man who first found out how to distinguish hours. Confound him too, who in this place set up a sundial to cut and hack my days so wretchedly into small portions. He was upset about the sundial. Oh my goodness, if he were dropped into this world today, he would implode. Just like that, just a spontaneous combustion, that would be all there is. He'd be like, what were you all thinking? I told you the sundial was a bad idea. Look what you've done to yourselves since then. The American psyche, our national soul, it's like it's huffing and it's puffing and it's trying to analyze and cure and scrutinize and fix and dissect and overcome all of the overload that is killing us. And we lack both the inward and the outward simplicity that will lead to an abundant spiritual harvest. That was the gist of what we were talking about last week. Simplicity is one of the great antidotes to living unburdened lives. It's the way to overcome. It's the solution against being overburdened. So what might simplicity look like? Well, simplicity starts when we embrace our limits. Now, I kind of think of this as like this long, awkward embrace with our limits. Like, you ever go in for a hug and it doesn't work out right? Right? Like you're just getting to know someone. You're not really sure like how you're supposed to do it. Left side, right side. You're going in for a hug and all of a sudden it's like a shoulder side hug. You're like, oh wait, the shoulder, got to do the shoulder. Or you're going in for a shoulder hug and they're giving you a bear hug. You're like, wow, that was intimate. And other times you're going in for a hug and they're like, oh, actually we're handshake people. and like there's this awkwardness because we really don't know how to work together. We don't quite fit yet together. And we're going to kind of work that out a little bit. Well, that's how it is when we start talking about limits. Because we all know it to be true. That's why we say the camel, there's a last straw. Because the camel actually has limits. What we don't often recognize is that the camel's limits are actually very much designed by God. Now, you might be able to carry an awesome load, and you might be super quick, and you might be more gifted and talented, and all of that. That's true. I mean, we're here in the greatest city in the world, which means you are the most awesomest people the world has ever known, right? And I really do genuinely believe that. I talk to some of my colleagues sometimes, and they're like, man, you guys have so many amazing people over there, like so many awesome. And for years, I used to tell them, actually, guys, we all have really awesome and amazing people. If you're here in New York, all of your people are awesome and amazing. Now I just go, yeah, I know. Because they didn't quite get it. And they were like, what do we all have? Like, it's New York for crying out. Like, yes, we're surrounded by really, truly awesome and amazing people, and you can carry a great deal. And you have a God-given limit. You have a God-given limit. And we know what happens when we refuse to honor our camel's limit. We snap that back. Are we going to get mad at the camel for having limits? I mean, is that the decision you're going to make? You're going to shame the camel for not being able to. How come you can't carry more? What are you doing? You would never do that. You wouldn't look at this animal and try to cajole it and guilt it into doing and carrying more. You would be like, oh my goodness, the camel's hurting. Let me help it, because you're actually a kind and compassionate people. You would try to be figuring out if you actually loved the creature, you would come over and say, wait, maybe you shouldn't even be carrying these. Why is this? But you don't need to carry that burden. You would help it figure out what burdens to carry. See, no matter how strong you are, you have limits that are set by God, and those limits are good. Some of you are like, lies from the pit of hell. No, they're not good. I hear it. I can hear it because it's what's in my head right now. I'm like, why do you lie to these people, Robert? No, but think about it, right? So in Genesis 1 and 2, the very beginning of the Bible, it's the story of creation. And God, he creates this incredible world, and he puts each thing in its place. And in there, he takes a man and he takes a woman. And he says, look at these little creatures I made. They're pretty amazing. They're pretty awesome. They need to sleep 8 hours of every 24. They need to eat every 2 hours, if you're like me. They have to have something to drink. If they don't have something to drink in like 3 days, they're dead. They're actually poorly suited for any sort of harsh environment, right? Because like they actually can't really. I mean, you try to survive. You go out. I always tell Cheryl, the apocalypse happened, head south, because none of us are going to make the first winter. Because this is what happened. People explored the world. They came here. They all died in their first winter because we're just so poorly suited for so much of that, because, in fact, we have limits. He told us to go and fill the earth with his glory by actually taking the Garden of Eden and extending it over the face of the whole planet. And he goes, go, procreate, multiply, have children, go everywhere. He didn't even let us do that on our own. We were dependent on someone else to help us, to let us procreate and actually fulfill. He built us with limits, all frail and beautiful and limited. And then he looked at the whole of the creation and he said, this is good. This is good. And we chafe against these limits to our own demise. Now, inward simplicity begins when we embrace our limits, but it flows from our divine center. And this is kind of what we were speaking about last week a little bit more. We were talking about the four soils, and we saw that only one of the soils in the parable that Jesus told in Luke 8 was actually productive. Still other seed fell on the fertile soil, and this seed grew and produced a crop that was 100 times as much as had been planted. And we spent a lot of time last week, you can check it out, it's on the website, to say this is what we were made to do. This is us on mission. This is us being productive in the world. This is where we find meaning and purpose and value, and where we get in sync with our Creator, and all sorts of beautiful and wonderful things happen when we are doing this. But most everything in this life competes with this harvest. Most everything, the culture, the values of this life, they are conspiring against us. We saw that in the other soil. It said the seed that fell among the thorns represent those who hear the message, but all too quickly the message is crowded out by the cares, riches, and pleasures of this life. And so they never grow into maturity. And this is a heartbreaking reality that so many of us have faced and continue to struggle against. And that was, again, captured all last week. But this is what pulls us away from our divine center. It's all of these cares and all of these worries about this life, and it's all of the pursuits that don't ultimately matter or add up to much at all. It's the pleasures that we think. There are little God substitute kinds of pleasures, and it's all of these sorts of things. The pursuit of riches, the spending of our riches, the management of our riches. And it sucks up all of the resources in your life so that the only thing that grows are these things rather than your divine center. Richard Foster, he said, because we lack a divine center, our need for security has led us to an insane attachment to things. We really must understand that the lust for affluence in contemporary society is psychotic. It's psychotic because it has completely lost touch with reality. We crave things we neither need nor enjoy. And we all know this. Like, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep running this same thing? Why am I on this wheel? Roll, wash, rinse, repeat every single day. Why? It's psychotic. We've lost our minds because we're no longer living out of a divine center. Because from the divine center flows this life of simplicity. And it's then when we start to settle on the values that will guide and shape us into genuine lived simplicity. What I mean by this is if you are living by the values of the world, then you will produce the kind of life that those values were designed to produce. But if you reorient your divine center among biblical values, it changes everything. One of these values would be to be God-centered. Does everything in your life revolve around Him? You're like, no, not everything in my life. In fact, I'm here to check off my religious duty for the week. I'm going to give it an hour and change, and then I'm done, and I'm going to go back to the rest of my life. And the scriptures say, you're never going to find it unless the whole of life is God-centered. What about mission? How do you know what it is we're supposed to be doing and what kind of energy you're supposed to put toward things if your life isn't actually wrapped around what God is calling you to do? What has He called you to do? How are you loving people? How are you loving Him? How are you serving the world? How are you figuring out how to share with people who are far from Jesus? And when you've done these things, when you've tasted these things, you're like, they're so much better than what I've been squandering my life on. What about the fact that people matter? Right? I mean, what else goes into eternity, my friends? What else goes into eternity but the souls of the people here around you and in your neighborhoods? You want to know how to reorient the whole of your center, your divine center? Then recognize that people matter, because that's what Jesus knew. Let's follow in his footsteps, follow his example. He knew this. What about possessing nothing? Jesus talked about this as well. What would it mean to hold everything we have with an open hand? That God can put in what he wants and he can take out what he wants. That he can funnel through us resources that are not yours anymore, but are his to use for his will, his plan. What if you became a conduit of blessing to others because of the resources that so quickly move through your possession? Maybe you don't possess anything anymore. Maybe you're just managing the resources of the King of the universe. Those are the stories, those are the values that the scriptures try to remind us of. Or what about this one? Time is not ours. If you felt like, oh my goodness, I can't simply think about adding something else because, I'm so packed up, I have no margin, I have so much. This is what we're talking about. Is your time yours? Because if you still cling to that fallacy, that your time is really yours to spend, you will find yourself a tyrant of a manager. A tyrant. You will load yourself up. You will do this. Jesus says, wait, my burden, my yoke, that's easy. It's light. And I'm going to help you carry it. Your burden, that's your problem. You want to live that way? You want to spend your time that way? Your problem. I've heard it said that God has put me on earth to accomplish certain things, and right now I'm so far behind I will never die. That's how I feel sometimes. I can't possibly die, not forever. I'm so far behind on my to-do list, which clearly means that God didn't assign all of those things to me. The inner life of simplicity produces in us a settledness that gives us power to live simply. So take out your 3x5 card I have there for you, and on one side of that card, you're going to just write inward simplicity. And then write, how healthy is your divine center? How healthy is your divine center? And as I've been talking, you've had a couple of thoughts that have jumped in, a couple of ideas, a couple of things that you've said, I wonder if this is something I need to be thinking about. I wonder if that's something I need to work on. I wonder if maybe God wants me to. Maybe it's some of those values. Maybe you think I'm struggling with time, or I'm wrapped up in my possessions, or I have no mission focused. Many Christians, even if they're trying to be God-centered, they're not mission-centered. What do you think it would take to increase the health of your divine center, your connectedness to your divine center, to put God back at the center of your life? Write down a couple of ideas, jot a couple of thoughts. If you're struggling with it, you can ask yourself, I will be happy when? And that will point you in a direction of what's sitting at the center of your heart. If you say, I'll be happy when I have that relationship in that way, when I finally have a kid, when I get out of this job, when I get into that neighborhood, this will give you a good indication of what currently is sitting on the throne of your heart. I will be happy when. All right, now we're going to talk about outward simplicity for a little bit. But outward simplicity is risky because people won't get it. You're going to be outwardly simple, not just simply inwardly simple, you will disappoint people. Some of these burdens that you're carrying for other people. People are depending on you to carry them. And as soon as you start unburdening some of these things and then maybe switching them out for some other values or cutting them in half, you're going to disappoint people. You're going to be living by values that are so radically different from everything that they hold that you'll be immediately judging their own decisions and lifestyle. Even within the church community, even among Christians, this can be risky. So you're going to have to end up charting your own course in this. You're going to be constantly deciding between what is good and what is best. It's easy between what's garbage and what's best or good. But to decide between what is good and what is best will take great wisdom. And not everyone will always agree. And it's risky as well because this is a place in life where you really can become a jerk. And so here's good advice: don't be a jerk. You could write that down if you want somewhere on your card. Don't be a jerk. And then some of you are like, I'm going to email that to Robert right now. Don't be a jerk. Actually, there's some people in the incubator that want to say that to me right now as well, who are sitting here right now. And sorry about being a jerk yesterday. So anyway, think about this for just a moment, right? As soon as we start adding clarity or explanations or details on what this might look like, even examples, then we immediately risk sounding or being judgmental. As soon as you're really good at something and you're like, wow, I've really made progress in this, and you go to tell other people, is there a little bit of judgment in you when you're doing it? If you're not able to do certain things, do you feel like you're harsh on yourself? See, so don't be a jerk, not to yourself and not to others. So last week I gave an example of what one of the things that frustrates me in this world. And I said, in our houses that are bigger than ever, we have closets that are full. And once our closets are full, we have an attic, and the attics are full. And then we kind of overflow into our garages, so much so that our garages are so packed with stuff that we can't actually even get our cars in the garages anymore. And then I said, and after that, we moved to a shed, right? Like another storage place on our property. And after that, we have some deck boxes because, they're not really sheds. And so now we have even more stuff. And once we finally overflow the bounds of all of this incredible amount of storage, we turn around and we rent a storage unit, often a climate-controlled storage unit for our crap, while homeless people are still on the street. This is what I said last week. This was a repeat. And I really do mean that. And that rant, I really do hold in my heart. Here's the problem with it. Here's the problem with the rent. I pay for rental storage for some of my stuff. And so you're like, well, that just means you're a hypocrite. Well, that could mean that as well. But that's not my point. My point here is that we've made a series of decisions all along the lines of what we think God is calling us to do for his kingdom and for his mission, which end up with us not having the storage that we would normally have and not even having a shed that we would normally have. But I still want to cut my own lawn. I want to cut my own lawn because I don't want to actually pay someone to cut my lawn. I think it's therapeutic for me to do it, and I like saving the money because I want to be able to use that money for other kingdom kinds of things that are important to me. So I go out and I want to cut my own lawn, which means I actually need a place to store the lawn stuff. And so I rent from my neighbor a sliver of his empty garage, which is weird that he has an empty garage. Not that I'm renting it from him, for $25 a month. And so I actually do rent. It's not climate controlled, and I can't stick a homeless guy in my neighbor's garage. But that would be funny. But my point in this is, out of context, one person's decision and another person's decision might look completely different. But once you understand the context, both of them, even if they go in opposite directions, for instance, you say to me, well, I had a 4,000 square foot house and I now own a 1,200 square foot house because I decided to downsize so that I can save money on taxes and on all of my repairs and maintenance because now I'm helping build an orphanage in Africa. Wow. You're doing an amazing thing. This is great. Like, you made serious sacrifices. And another person might be saying, no, I actually upgraded my house to a 4,000 square foot house because I have all sorts of family and friends and neighbors and people depend on me. And I'm putting people in my house and I'm giving them a home and we're doing all of this stuff with this resource. And so, wow, you're amazing. And so you can't judge it based on even the size of a person's house. You can't even talk about cars. Like, I have more cars than other people have cars because most of my cars are like a minute away from breaking down. And so I have an extra car in case I need a burner car. And so people would look at that and go, that's not living simple. But it is in line with all of the other principles and values that I'm trying to bring to bear on the kingdom. So I buy a car that cost $3,000 that had 245,000 miles on it when I bought it. That's my truck. People are like, that doesn't make any sense. You're going to spend so much time and money, getting it repaired. Maybe. Seems to work for me. Be careful in us judging what another person is doing. This is a work for you to do inwardly. It is difficult. It is risky. It is challenging. And just because it gets difficult and complex and it needs wisdom and it needs the community to help us think through these things doesn't mean you ought not to do it. Don't grow weary in doing good. Don't grow weary in doing good. Now, on the other side of the card, write outward simplicity. Outward simplicity. And I want to give you a couple of categories for outward simplicity. And again, as soon as I start talking specifics, I know I risk sounding judgy, being judgy, or putting unnecessary guilt or shame on you guys. That's not the intention here at all. I'm giving examples or ideas, some evidences that this is actually an issue. And what I'm hoping is that while we're talking about this, the Spirit will cause something to resonate in your heart. And as that happens, that you'll take note of it. That's why you have a piece of paper and a pen in front of you, because if there's something going on, if you're going, oh my goodness, that is my life, that's a problem for me, then maybe the Spirit is trying to say, let's do some work here. And then this is going to be a work between you and God and the people that you know and love and trust, the other Jesus followers who are committed to living a radical kind of lifestyle. This is calling you to that residence is calling you to a deeper and a more thorough look at these areas of your life. So information overload is one of the examples. I'm only going to give you a handful of them because there's just tons of them and you can apply them in tons and tons of different ways. But right now they say there are 2,700 new print books every day. You're not going to keep up, right? 10,000 if you count all of the electronic things that are being published. If you took every single book in every library, in every school, in every home, and in every company in the world, and you piled them all up in one big state, like in Delaware or something like that, every single book in print right now, it is 6% of the world's knowledge. The other 94% is kept digitally. 90% of the information that the world has produced since we produced information, 90% has been created in the last 2 years. You're not going to keep up. It's an absolute impossibility. Utility bills now have dozens of separate lines and fees and exclusions and exceptions, and you read through all of this stuff page after page after page, only to find out you have to pay more this month than you did last month. That's what happens. Everything now comes with instructions that are more like a car radio. You know, we used to know how to listen to music in our cars. You used to get in there, you used to hit a button, click. Maybe if you were super sophisticated, you'd put a tape in. I'm going way back. The tape, anyway, go way back. But we knew these things. We knew that you could put on a watch and you could tell time. Now my watch talks to me. It criticizes me. The other day, I was going to my car and it said, it looks like you're out for a walk, because my heart rate went up too high. How judgy. I'm just out of shape. Like, why would it do that? Cheryl walks in, I'm not kidding, it was like 2 nights ago. She walks in the room, she goes, what are you reading? And I was dying. I'm reading my instructions for my toothbrush. Toothbrush. We used to know how to brush our teeth. I read it, then I read it a second time, and I still couldn't get it to do what I wanted it to do. But it's to brush your teeth. Like, what else does it have to? Exactly. There's just so much all the time. We need to be more selective. We need to limit the news inputs. We get one weekly periodical for news every week, and I read a 5-minute nonpartisan description of events that have happened every day. That's it. I'm done. I can't engage with everything else. I have a drawer that I fill up. If I get more information and things I'm supposed to read and articles and awesome things are going to change the world, and I put it in this drawer, and then when the drawer is full, that's my marker, when it is full, I take it all out and I go to the garbage can. And I sort it right there. I have to read it before I sit back down. So I just go to the garbage can, and everything I'm not willing to stand and read right now has to be just thrown away. And I'm watching all of this beautiful work and information and ideas all just go right into it. And I'm like, and then in a month I'm going to have a whole other drawer full. And so it's just a way of simplifying these kinds of ideas. Unsubscribe from something every single day. Turn off all of your alerts. Do you really need to know who walked in front of your house every single moment of the day that you're not even there? Do you ever need to know what the Kardashians have been up to? Like ever. Like if that alert ever comes through on any sort, does it ever have to happen? Choice is a type of overload. Experts tell us that throughout the day you make upwards of 35,000 decisions every day, and by evening you might be exhausted and not quite know why. And this is it, choice, overload. I said last time that there are 170,000 ways for us to get our Starbucks coffee now. That's how many decisions you got to work yourself through. 170,000 different combinations that now exist at Starbucks. You would never walk into Starbucks and say, I think I'll take one of each. It wouldn't work. You don't have enough cup holders in your car. Maybe you need a bigger car. Maybe I need more cup holders. And no, that's the wrong direction. You don't do that. You're actually trying to simplify. And yet, when it comes to our kids' lives and their schedules, when it comes to the opportunities that we don't want to miss out on, when FOMO seizes us in those darkest moments, we do exactly that. We're like, we'll take one of everything, please. We'll let them be involved in everything. We can't risk any lost opportunity. We think, if it won't work for Starbucks, it's not going to work for your kids as you pack their schedules and fill them up and teach them everything wrong about the values where they're going to find their worth and identity. How many supermarkets and stores do you need to go to fill up your fridge and your cupboards? Cheryl always tells me, if I can't get it at Costco, Trader Joe's, or Walmart, that's it. I'm done. That's it. It's dead to me. Hey, you think we could try to get this? Only if it's at one of those stores. That's it. Not going to do it any other way. How do we simplify our choices? How do we stay put? How do we stick with decisions? Stop researching every decision to death. Cheryl bought a toaster recently. Our toaster burned out. I bet she opened it up and she clicked. I would have read reviews. I would have been like, wait, what if there's a better toaster? What if I can save $5? Meanwhile, the toaster is now toasting, bread on our counter, and I still would have been like, hey, Trevor, have you recently purchased a good toaster? Anyone you could recommend to me? Ryan's really good at this stuff. Ryan, why? Why do we do this? Others have one outfit. I love this idea so much. Right? You see this in the tech world. These guys wear one exact outfit every day. I've flirted with this idea over my life. I'm like, I would love to do that. Walk in every day, take the exact shirt, take the exact pants. The thing is, you got to be all in, because if you do it like 2 or 3 days out of the week, people are like, ooh, I think he's wearing the same thing he wore yesterday. Like, you have to do it every day, and before they go, oh, he's just being weird. Like, he thinks he's Steve Jobs. But imagine that. I recently started having the exact same thing for breakfast, lunch, and all of my snacks, because I was like, I just can't keep thinking about all of this all the time, making decisions all of these times during the day. Now it's just, I have no decisions to make. This is what I do for almost my entire day, for at least a while. It's just ways that we can do this. I wanted to join a gym class, and so typical of me, I looked up every gym in my neighborhood, looked at all of their schedules. I found that there was one class that any one of them could offer at any given time that I really wanted to be a part of. I think I'll box on this day. I think I'll try this core training thing over here. I hear Orange Fitness. I'm like, I'll just do class. I'll do a class, and I'll plan it. I was like, this is ridiculous. What am I going to do? This is so many options, so many choices. Let me just reduce this. So I said, all right, I'm going to go to one gym, and whatever class is offered on that works with my schedule that day, I am going to take, no matter what the class is. Which means I end up at Inferno Pilates sometimes, which is quite a sight to see, by the way, because you can imagine me doing a bridge and with the music anyway, you probably don't actually need that image in your head. But it's simplified the whole thing. Make it a choice. What about commitment overload? Look through your life. Where are these commitments? Responsibilities, too many relationships to go deep with too many of them. Too many classes, courses, too many gigs, too many side gigs, sports, extracurricular. All of these kinds of things. You know how often I will talk to couples whose marriages suck, and they go, I don't know what's going on. And sometimes we don't know what's going on. Sometimes, you know what it almost often is now? Neglect. Just neglect of the relationship. We're not even having like this whole big thing. All of these sometimes are huge issues. I'm not saying that. But more often than not, it's just neglect. What happened? Too many other competing commitments. We invited Netflix into the bedroom. Facebook's in the bedroom. Couples are like, we don't feel connected anymore. Because you're not. Because you don't talk. because you don't just waste time together like you did when you first met. You don't just spend hours into the night talking and dreaming and thinking and laughing and walking and holding hands anymore. We have to live deliberately. Space will rarely, perhaps never happen by accident. How can we reduce the number of commitments? How do we create rhythms? How do we reevaluate our screens, our sleep time? How do we take more naps? How do we schedule downtime? If it's important, we would schedule it. Financial overload. We all have an experience with this. Think of how much time and energy we spend thinking about making money or spending money or saving money or investing money. How many alerts do we get to tell us our portfolio dropped by 0.5%? Why? Why such an obsession? Certainly isn't something that Jesus asked us to carry. Quite the contrary. We can talk about debt, and we can talk about, this whole idea of trying to make sure that everything goes a little bit further, and we get obsessed with that. We can talk about setting a budget and keeping it to a budget, but all of these kinds of things, financial overload, possession overload, this is killing us. This is an explosion right now in declutter kinds of ideas, right? And so there's books and there's speakers out there and all this kind of stuff. People are like, listen, this is what we really need to do. We need to, and yes, we do. We all understand this. How do we reduce what we need? G.K. Chesterton, he said there are two ways to get enough. One is to continue to accumulate more and more, and the other is to desire less. What if we were only to buy things for their usefulness and never for prestige? Cheryl, she's got this funny thing she does. Her closet is like a little Hunger Games arena. And so every single time something comes into her closet, something has to come out. It's very Darwinian. And so it's like a survival of the fittest. There's only so many hangers that are going to go in that closet and on that rod, and not another one. And so every time something comes in, a decision has to be made of something going out. You can do this with your whole house. She actually does this with the whole house too. Something comes in and she's like, what are you getting rid of? Nothing. What are you getting rid of? What are you getting rid of? So how's it going to happen? How's it going to fit? Where's it going to go? Where's it going to live? What's the space going to be? I mean, saying it, I'll build a shed. I don't know so many questions. I just keep piling more garbage around. These are the kinds of ways. How do we de-accumulate and change our relationship? Now, on your card, write these areas out. Maybe you already hit a couple more lines. Draw a couple blanks in there. What other areas of overload is God speaking to you about? Maybe it's relational overload. You just feel so thin all the time. Maybe it's just people and activity and noise. Maybe you're an introvert and it's like, you gotta stop using so many words or I'll kill you. The introverts, they think that way, by the way. When they're smiling at you all nice, they're like, stop talking or I'll kill you. So, but maybe that's you. Maybe you're like, I need more of this. I need to figure, where are you feeling the overload and what is resonating with your spirit and what are some practical steps that you can take? Write them down. And let this little card serve as a way of simplifying your vision toward these things. François Fenelon, if that's how I pronounce it. When we are truly in this interior simplicity, our whole appearance is franker, more natural. This true simplicity makes us conscious of a certain openness, gentleness, innocence, gaiety, and serenity. Is this what describes your life? Oh, how amiable this simplicity is. Who will give it to me? I leave all for this. It is the pearl of the gospel. Father, I am asking that for each and every one of us here, that you would cause our hearts to resonate with the values of the kingdom, that our divine center would be strengthened, it would grow, that we would commune with you as if in the cool of the garden, that we would walk with you and that we would rest in you. And Father, that we would not feel and continue to live under the tyranny of the values of this world, but instead, Lord, we would live as a counterculture, that people would see our lives and not quite get it, and they would want to know what in the world is driving you to make these kinds of decisions and to simplify life in all of these different areas. How is it that you are always so easily interrupted, Lord? That's what we want people to say about us. How is it that we can be so easily interrupted? How is it that we seem like we're working on God time, not our own time? How is it that we can let money so freely fall from our hands? That we can give things away and resist accumulating. Lord, this is the kind of people that we want to be so that we can have space and margin to walk with you and to serve you and to do what matters in this world, to love people deeply and sacrificially. Lord, this is what we want. Make this more and more true of us. Stir up our hearts. We ask it all in your Son's name. Amen.